Aren't we lucky to have heard that original recording of a little mouse in 1543 nibbling on some cheese that was put out by a lonely widow? Quite phenomenal. Hello there, and welcome back to the final couplet with me, Theo Cowan. Today we're looking at another sonnet, of course, because that is what this podcast is all about. And that sonnet is Sonnet 91. Hooray! I hope you've all had a good week. Here's a quick thought before we dive into the sonnets. I was watching a bit of Shakespeare on YouTube, I think. Just some actors doing some Shakespeare. Can't remember which one. And I thought there's a certain style, isn't there, of Shakespearean acting. And I'm not against it. It's just we've all just adopted this way of doing it. And it's quite large and exaggerated. And there's a couple of styles. People have developed them, but one style is sort of the old school style, which is to be or not to be. That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer. Sort of like that, quite full on, quite large. And then there's the sort of more modern version that maybe, you know, your TV actors coming in, they're doing their stage work and they're coming in, they're going, to be or not to be? That's the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer, slings and arrows, that sort of thing. I just find it interesting that there's these certain ways that we've adopted doing Shakespeare and how that's morphed. And if I had the ability to go back in time, if someone could grant me that, maybe one of you subscribers could, one of you listeners could grant me that wish. That'd be nice. If you can do that, get in touch. But if I could go back in time, I'd definitely go back to one of the Globe performances just to see what they were doing. I mean, was it actually like how we're doing it now, or was it just completely different? Probably completely different. But what was the acting like then? Fascinating, isn't it, to think what they were up to? Anyway, that's enough waffle. Let's dive in to Sonnet 91. Some glory in their birth, some in their skill, some in their wealth, some in their body's force, some in their garments, though newfangled ill, some in their hawks and hounds, some in their horse. And every humour hath his adjunct pleasure, wherein it finds a joy above the rest. But these particulars are not my measure. All these I better in one general best. Thy love is better than high birth to me, richer than wealth, prouder than garments cost, of more delight than hawks or horses be. And having thee, of all men's pride I boast. Wretched in this alone, that thou mayst take all this away, and me most wretched make. So there we have it, Sonnet 91, and thank God he's stopped talking obsessively about breaking up with his lover. I mean, there is elements of the breakup at the end, of being left alone at the end, but we'll let him off with this one. And I would say this is definitely one of his simpler sonnets, isn't it? I mean, I don't know if listening to that you understood more than you have done in other sonnets, if you're not a Shakespeare buff, if you're just your average person sitting down having a listen. Because I, reading it, certainly found it easier to understand than I usually do. So I would say if I was showing someone a Shakespeare sonnet for the first time, I might go for Sonnet 91 because it's quite easy to understand, I'd say. He's essentially just saying some people take pride in this, some people love this, some people love that, but I've actually got the best thing of all, and then explains what that is, and then at the end says, don't leave me, please, because that would suck. I'd be really sad. And that's a sonnet. So, an easy one, a simple one. But having said that, we should break it down line by line and work out what the hell Shakespeare was going on about in Sonnet 91. So we start with some glory in their birth, some in their skill. Pretty basic. Some people, I should say, take pride in their noble birth, I'd imagine. I mean, I don't think people take pride in just being born, probably. That would be a bit of a weird one to take pride in. So I imagine he means in being born into a nice, wealthy, noble family. Some people take pride in that. Sort of a Nepo baby vibe to it. And some people take pride in their skill, in their talent in something. Then he continues with some in their wealth, some in their body's force. So, similar theme. Some people take pride in their wealth, of course, their riches, and some in their strength and their big old muscles. Bodybuilders, if you will. And then he carries on. Some in their garments, though newfangled ill. So some people take pride in their fashionable clothes, even if they look a bit stupid or a bit weird. Newfangled ill. So actually, is Shakespeare just having a little pop there at the fashion of the time? Of the new things coming in and going, they look a bit stupid. What are you doing? What are you doing wearing that? These first three lines we can really relate to, can't we? In the modern day, they all remain the same. People being born into nice wealthy families, people being proud of their talent, of their money, of their muscles, looking good, going to the gym, of their clothes, and then new fashions coming in, stuff like that. And then the next line he does veer off. I'd say people are less proud of the next things, but we've had a good run. So he continues with some in their hawks and hounds, some in their horse. I guess there are people in the modern day that are proud of their hawks and their hounds and their horses. There's definitely people proud of their horses for sure. I guess it's a minority, but there are proud horse owners. Hello if you're listening and you're a lovely proud horse owner, and hello if you're listening and you're a proud hawk owner. You don't even need to own the hawk, I guess. Just you're really proud of all hawks. Fair play to you. And he continues with, and every humour hath his adjunct pleasure, wherein it finds a joy above the rest. Which is essentially saying every person finds pleasure in different things, and something that they enjoy above everything else. But, and we know Shakespeare likes a but, not in that way. Well, maybe in that way. But these particulars are not my measure. All these I better in one general best. So he's saying none of these things actually matter to me, by the way. There's one thing that is better than all of the things I've just mentioned. Thy love is better than high birth to me. Richer than wealth, prouder than garments cost, of more delight than hawks or horses be, and having thee of all men's pride I boast. So he's sort of now saying your love is better than all of the things I mentioned earlier. Your love is better than being born into a noble family. Your love is richer than wealth. Your love is prouder than garments cost. And your love is more delightful, it's more fun than hawks or horses be. Thank God your love is better than hawks and horses, because that's the one that I was worried about. And now we're on to the final couplet. So far it's been quite a nice sort of lovely sonnet really, and then of course he's got to have a sort of sadder note at the end, a sort of more desperate note. So he finishes with, wretched in this alone, that thou mayst take all this away, and me most wretched make. And here he's saying there's one thing that would make me miserable though, and that is the fact that you can take all these pleasures away from me. All this pleasure that you give me, you can take them away, which would make me really bloody sad. What an ending to quite a nice little sonnet really. It's sort of saying how amazing his lover's love is, and how great it is to be around him, but please, God, don't break up with me, because if you did, I'd be so sad. No one wants someone doing that in a relationship. That's horrible, Shakespeare. You don't say those sort of things. Just talk about the love. You don't need to then at the end say, oh, God, please, I need your love. It would make me so sad if I didn't have it. It's not a good look. So that is Sonnet 91, and it's a good one. It's a nice one. It's easier to digest than some of the ones we've had recently. And I think it's about time we put this to our story. If you remember, last few weeks, Shakespeare has been round at Ben Jonson's house talking to Christopher Marlowe, because of course Ben Jonson and Christopher Marlowe are together in this story. But Shakespeare was with Christopher Marlowe, if you remember all those stories back. And he's gone to Christopher Marlowe and said, look, make up your mind. I am at rock bottom at the moment. My play, Juliet and Romeo, hasn't been commissioned by the Globe, which is a nightmare. I've got a leak in my roof, also a nightmare. And I'm having a terrible time in life. So if you're going to sort of end this relationship for good, if you want to spend the rest of your life with Ben Jonson, then tell me now. Hit me while I'm down. And that was Sonnet 90. So let's see how Christopher Marlowe responds to that, and how Sonnet 91 fits into all this. Shakespeare finishes reading Sonnet 90 to Christopher Marlowe. Ben Jonson has also been listening in at the doorway, and he chuckles and says, oh, Shakespeare. Sad, sad Shakespeare. Christopher Marlowe never wants to be with you again. He's in love with me, Shakespeare. Get used to it. Christopher Marlowe shoots Ben Jonson a look, as if to say, shut up. He clears his throat and says, well, look, boys, there's only one way to settle this, and that is to go away. You've got 24 hours to write a sonnet. Doesn't need to be a sonnet, could be a haiku about what I mean to you and how amazing I am, essentially, and how sad it would be to lose my love. And I will judge this blindly, so I won't know whose poem is whose. We will have an independent man or woman read out the poems, and then the poem that I decide is the best, I will marry. Oh my God, exclaimed Ben Jonson and Shakespeare at the same time, and they both, quick as a flash, run out of the room and prepare their quills. Shakespeare leaves the house and wanders the streets, looking for inspiration. First of all, he sees a big, burly man lifting a keg of beer above his head for some reason. And he thinks, bloody hell, look at those muscles, rippling. He must work really hard on those, and he must be really proud of them. He continues on his way and passes a young lady wearing quite a garish, he thought, pink dress that had little yellow sequins attached to it. He thought, oh, fashion these days. Weird, isn't it? Why can't people just wear the same things we've always worn? And then just before he gets to his house, he sees a man leading a horse with a hawk on its back. And he thinks, how strange. I don't think I've ever seen that before. And the man is stroking the horse's mane and then tapping the hawk affectionately on the beak and feeding it some seeds. It was very clear that that man loved that horse and hawk more than anything. And Shakespeare thought, it's crazy what people love, isn't it? It's crazy what people admire. But I don't need any of that. I don't need a horse or a hawk. I don't need muscles, even though I do have them. I don't need to be fashionable. I just need the love of Christopher Marlowe. And a light bulb went off in his head. Of course it was in his head. Light bulbs don't exist yet. Come on. He had all the inspiration he needed to write the best sonnet and finally win the marriage of Christopher Marlowe. So he went up to his little writer's room and scrawled Sonnet 91. 24 hours later, he returned to Ben Jonson's house and went up to Christopher Marlowe's room. Ben Jonson was waiting there. Christopher Marlowe was sat on the bed with a blindfold on. There was also a little man stood there who tipped his hat to Shakespeare and said, "All right, I'm the reader. I'm going to read the poems. So just hand over your poem and then I'll read it to him and then he can decide who he wants to marry." Shakespeare says, okay. Here's my sonnet." The little man cleared his throat and said, "Are you ready, everyone?" Everyone nodded their head, including Christopher Marlowe, who was, of course, still blindfolded. And the little man said, "All right then, this is the first one. I love you like a candle loves a flame. I like you..." I'm sorry everyone. Can I just redo that? "I love you like a candle loves a flame. I love you like a cold person loves a coat. I love you like flowers love a vase. I love you." So that's the first one. Shakespeare started to sweat. God, that was a good poem, he thought. And he began to wonder if his poem would live up to it. He looked over at Ben Jonson, who was smiling smugly, as if to say, "Good luck, Shakespeare. Beat that." And then the little man cleared his throat again. Okay, here's the second one, everyone. Sonnet 91. Some people take pride in their noble birth, some in their talent, some in their wealth, some in their strength and big old muscles, some in their fashionable clothes, even if they look stupid. Some are proud of their hawks and hounds, some of their horses. Every person finds pleasure in different things, something they enjoy above all else. But none of these things matter to me. There is one thing better than them all. Your love is worth more to me than noble birth, more valuable than wealth, more satisfying than expensive clothes, and more fun than hawks and horses. And having you, I have something better than all of the other things men are proud of. But there's one thing that makes me miserable. You can take all this pleasure away from me, which would make me the saddest man around. So there we have it, Sonnet 91 and the story that goes with it. A bit of a cliffhanger for you there. I bet you can't wait to find out who Christopher Marlowe chooses to marry. Well, unfortunately, you'll have to wait until next week. Until then, bye!